Hi, everybody. Sorry for the late start.
Okay.
Worries.
Yeah, the Zoom wasn't where it normally is in my. Anyway,
No worries. Let's see, who are we waiting on?
No, there's Bob, but he's coming.
Okay.
and
Is are the select board joining at the
no,
top here?
no, it ended up, they did not have a quorum, only Rita could come. So
Got it.
this can be done by, guys can vote it first and then it can go to them. But I have a request that we move the transfers to after the other items.
Okay.
Just because Gail and I were working through stuff this morning, and then I had meetings all day, so I'm just putting
problem.
Gail's stuff together. I'm close to being finished, but if you can start on the other things, we can be in good shape.
Okay. Will
Thank
do.
you.
All right. I wonder if I should give Bob a minute here. Looks like he's trying to connect. Maybe while we're waiting, I'll welcome April. Hi, April. Welcome to the FinCom. I think you have some experience with this group, and of course, the select board as well. So I'm super grateful that you're volunteering for another round of this. Oh, you're on mute, April.
I am really looking forward to it. I think this is a great group of people. You know, I've watched all the hard work. You know, George must feel like I'm following. We're all on the same committees together.
Only three.
Only three. That's right.
Yeah.
But
The dynamic duo.
I feel like it. Yeah, I think this will be. I know it's a lot of hard work, but I just look forward to working with all of you.
Right. Well, I know that it's certainly you're bringing lots of really key experience and obviously you know these issues better than I do, I'm sure. So
I wouldn't say that.
So I'm glad that there's not going to be like a steep learning curve for you. So anyway, so welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Let's start with minutes from June 13. Let's see. All right. So I think Susie sent these out a while back. Assume everyone has had a chance to look at them. I did not have any changes I wanted or questions. Does anybody else have any questions or suggestions? Hi, Bob.
I apologize. There's something going on with my credit card, and I'm getting these strange people calling me, asking me to give them my information, and
That's all.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I just had to hang up on the guy and tell him I'm not going to give him any information on the telephone.
Yeah, that's a good policy. So we were just getting started. We welcome April.
Hi, April.
Hi, Bob.
And we're just about to discuss the minutes from June 13. I didn't see any hands up for questions or suggestions. Did you have any, Bob?
I wasn't here, so I'll just.
Oh yeah,
It's with address. I was on the road.
George and Bob were out at the last meeting. Okay. All right. Seeing no hands, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 13 as written. Anyone want a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. And let's do a roll call.
Overnight is sustained.
Groves abstained.
Hemingway, aye.
Stein,
Cashew, aye.
Stein abstain.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, aye.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, but you're not, are you?
Oh, can you hear?
So-
For
Sorry,
Shutesbury?
Jim, your window says you're muted, but I can definitely hear you. Do you have like a
Isn't
second?
that magic?
So we have two interlopers at town hall right now.
I
Um,
see.
Jim and Susie, there's a power outage in Cooleyville. So they're
Oh.
downstairs in town hall trying to survive the vacuuming and the custodial work all around them and the blaring music.
Got it.
Yeah, so we're working through Susie's sound.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's like,
Because if I turn mine on, we get kind of reverb or something
Yep.
wacky about it.
yeah, no, I can, you said, it sounds a little bit like you're underwater, but I can definitely make out what you're saying. So we'll be fine. Okay, great. So minutes are approved. Oh, shoot, let's see. Okay. So next topic was this discussion I thought we could have about the merits of any alternative budget format. So just to tee this up, I think this kind of stems from a suggestion or comment that Paul Lyons had made in, I think, our meeting when we were prepping for our budget presentation and annual town meeting. Paul had mentioned that there were some other municipalities that I guess he had some discussions with their town moderators around other approaches that and I don't know which municipalities he was referring to, but that there are communities that have, I guess, a budget format that allows department heads a little bit more flexibility to kind of spend money or move funds from within their department budgets from line to line. And I think there was, at least some curiosity among, I think, some committee members to have a little discussion about the pros and cons of I guess, first, just the idea of would there be some benefit to adopting a different kind of budget format? Yeah, that was a little less restrictive. Didn't impact the overall budget amounts that were would be requested and funded at town meeting for departments as a whole, but would have some ability for them, or would create some ability for them to move or to allocate that sort of overall budget for their department in a little more flexible way than they currently do right now. So I think there are sort of two parts to this. One is that even an idea that's worth exploring? And then and I make no assumptions about what the group feels about that. And then, but if B, I mean, if there's some interest in that and there's some consensus that might actually be a helpful thing or might solve some problems or issues that come up, then I think the sort of second part of the conversation is well, how would we implement that, and what exactly would that alternative format look like? So, and I also wanted to just remind everybody that Susie did some helpful kind of legwork on this in that sending us links to at least like 6 or so neighboring towns. Maybe I'll I don't know. I suspect April didn't get that document, right?
I did.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Susie, you're so good. All right. And so, yeah, so her document included links to the, the budget areas or documents from those towns. And so let me pause there for a minute and just see if there are some general comments about the value of exploring this or concerns you have. And I'll open it up. So Bob, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to express my view, which is that, first of all, I don't think that this kind of policy would fit all cases. Certainly, it may fit some cases where it would be advisable to allow more simplification of a budget. And so that would not provide for us, the town, getting the money back at the budget line for specific items such as fuel for the highway department or police or something else along those lines wasn't fully spent. I think it's a good idea for us to know with reasonable amount of detail what's being spent and for what, when we have a department head before us and he or she is defending their budget. And then we have a responsibility to follow that budget through the year and see how much money is required for the operations of that department. And if we just make all the budget one lump sum that is just given, provided by the town and the taxpayer for the year for any department, I think we lose track of the ability to monitor and to evaluate the cost of running our town. And I think that would be a bad thing. So, last year we did provide, I think, the fire chief with some kind of flexibility within his budget on some of the lines that were being funded for hoses and emergency air and stuff like that. But I think as a general idea, I'm not in favor of this, just to simplify and give a lump sum to a department and then lose track of what it costs to run. And, we can adjust things. A lot of times in many of these given budgets, if you look at a line, the history behind that line is that the department head came to us and said, look, I've got a new requirement to do X. I've got to get clean sewers. And this is the contract I have. It's going to cost X amount of dollars. So please fund that line for me so that I can pay for that. And so then we lose that specificity. And I don't think that's a good thing.
George.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree to it. I think we should pursue it. Absolutely. I think we should look into it. But I wouldn't agree to it if we didn't have the details. I'm with Bob on that. I mean, of course, we need to see the details of every department. So for me, number one, the implementation that you mentioned, AJ, I think is the most important thing. What does Becky think about it, and how hard is it? What's the challenge going to be for presenting it to the town? And then as far as the detail goes, I would still expect to get the same expense report that we get now, which has for each department all the different lines in that department. And because that's how we're going to build the budgets. That's how we're going to expect the managers to explain their budgets to us. The only thing that we'll do differently is once we build the budget, and we can use the template we have now. And certainly in regards to what I just mentioned about what does Becky think, because she's, Becky, you're ultimately the one that puts it together. I can certainly help you with that. It's really the subtotal lines in the expense report that we will be budgeting at. And remember, the whole point of this is for approval at town meeting, showing a summary to the voters to approve so that the managers have that flexibility. That does not take away the requirement for us to see the details. I think that's really important. The other thing I'll say, it would save us transfers. We'd have far fewer transfers like the ones we're going to have today. And then, yeah, and I think there probably would be some exceptions. Some departments we might want to blow up some of the detail. We can figure that out as we go through it and talk about that. But I'm in favor of it, and those are the reasons why.
Susie?
I guess I want to figure out if the Gale expense reports can be different than the budget we present at town meeting for the warrant. I think the pros to having a wage line and an operating line the way Conway does, they had that lumping, would be town meeting would find it simpler to read. There would be better department flexibility. And Jim Walton said last time that there would be less across the board inflating in lines because they have a lump to work with and not items that they would inflate. And it would shorten the budget review at town meeting. And the cons to this is I wonder if without the detail at town meeting, so just simply a wages and operating expense, if the lack of detail would create a lack of knowledge and maybe less sympathy and support for a budget that doesn't have detailed pieces, like this is how we buy the hoses, this is how we do the snow. And then historically, the comparisons, if we change to a two-part format, just wages and operating, the historical comparisons would take a while to sort of rebuild that this is how we did it. But I'm not clear that changing the budget presented at town meeting into a two-part format for each department would actually change or has to change Gail's reports. Maybe we can have both. It's just that what we present at town meeting would have the simplified two-category method the way Conway has.
Jim Hemingway?
Yes, I agree with Bob on this one. I think we need to have the detail about how departments think that they're going to be dividing up the money that they're being given or asking for. And without that detail, then we're kind of adrift. We don't know how the money's being spent. And I don't think that's a good idea.
So Jim, I'm just going to respond. And I think I hear consensus in this group that for the purpose of our role, our kind of watchdog role, we require as a finance committee some that kind of level of detail that we see in our expense report right now. Maybe with some exceptions, maybe there's some occasional line here or there that could be collapsed. So I think we all agree with that. I guess the idea, and I would pose this as a question to both Jim and Bob, since you both kind of expressed this concern. If we were to, if it was possible for us to continue to receive the expense reports as currently formatted, and that there was a distinction between the expense reports that we review and the budget that's approved at town meeting, would that address your kind of primary concern that you both raised, which is we need to know as a committee how these department heads are allocating their kind of overall budget? Bob?
I can speak for myself here. And in my view is that, the budget is comprised, just like when I do an estimate for a house or something, it's comprised of components that the department head has to put together, and year to year they vary. Sometimes a cost might actually go down over time and history, and it might be something we want to know about and be able to track. Oftentimes things track in a different direction. We are aware of that. We make modifications, increases in funding for that reason. I think it's important that we keep that in mind. I would not object at all to the presentation being made at town meeting, which I think is pretty much what it is now, even though the lines are existing in the budget that's presented at town meeting. The budget number is really what's kind of what people are going to go A or nay on. And I think that the public should know what the budget is comprised of as well. So I don't think that should be taken away from the voter, from the town meeting member. So personally, I think that as you said, I think there's some in some cases, we can fold one item in the budget into another and make it one line. But I think it has to be looked at a case by case basis. And I don't like the idea of lump sum funding and presenting that to the public in that way. I like having the amount of detail that we have now is not really that extreme as far as I'm concerned. I think I think that it's important for people to understand where their money's going. And you know, generally people do support spending. I don't see there's a crisis or anything in that regard. So why change it?
Okay, April, sorry, I missed your hand was up earlier.
No, that's fine. You know, I wanted to echo what you were saying, AJ, that I think that the finance committee does need to know, you know, when the budget is presented by the department heads, what the details are, but you know, giving them, the department heads, more flexibility within that, I think would make their job easier. I also think it would be interesting to ask the department heads their feedback on this kind of an idea.
All right, any other general comments, George?
Yeah, I would also say we probably want to hear what the accountant says about this. Can she continue to give us the same detail report, but would she need a separate summary report? Because she's going to have to, you know, the approvals and the warrants are going to have to tie back to the summary report. And I do think that, you know, you can have summary reports and detail reports. I mean, I did it through my whole career. You always had the high level report where you could see what's going on real quick. And then you had the detail report when you started asking detailed questions. And we can do that, I think, in a number of different ways, in a number of different places. We could even do it at town meeting and say, I know this is confusing and we probably don't want to do this, but we could even hand out two budgets, the summary and the details. And if you have questions, look at the detail. But when it's time to vote, we're going to vote the summary, because it's voting that summary that is going to make things go smoother during the year.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Jim Hemingway?
Yes, I think keeping the detail in place forces departments to think more carefully about how they're going to divide up what monies they are granted to them by the town. It forces them to be more specific. And I think along the way, if adjustments have to be made and they bring those requests to the finance committee in order to make those adjustments, that would be fine. And we could be more flexible perhaps on being able to allow them to take money from one thing to another. So I'm very much in favor of keeping that arrangement the way it is. And I agree with George on maybe having two ways to take a look at the budget, sort of macrocosmically and microcosmically, so to speak, so that the folks who want to look at the detail can at town meeting, and those who just want to see the big overall figures can look at it that way. I think that's a good idea.
Let me get Jim Walton first, since I haven't heard from him, and then we'll go to Susie.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're talking two different things here. Maybe you can't hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You can, okay.
I can hear you.
I think I hear that we want to keep these lines mostly still visible for us and for whoever needs to see them. We want to continue that. And I think we're pretty much all in consensus on that. I think the question is, what level of responsibility do we think our department heads should have? Do we want to have them nail down specific line items, many line items, and have them own each one of those and responsible for delivering each one of those and not exceeding? I think it's human nature when in your budgeting process, the people that are doing the budgeting want to be conservative. They don't want to exceed their budgets. So the more items you have, the more items you have to not exceed. And that all adds up to bigger budgets. And I think we as a finance committee would like to find ways to try to maybe push budgets to lower levels. And if a department head has an opportunity to say, okay, if I exceed in this area, if I buy one extra hose and I go over the hose budget, and then the department, the fire gear budget is lower, I can work with those two lines, and I'm responsible for those. And I can take a chance and maybe have lower budget on both of those line items, because I can take some chances when I can move around within these lines than when I'm responsible for each line. I'm gonna have to come up, if I'm responsible for a budget, I have 10 items and I can't go over them, I'm gonna be conservative. I'm not gonna go over them. But if I have 10 items and I'm responsible for the top item, for the line, for the total line, and I have some flexibility as the year goes on and things happen differently, and we all know things happen differently during the course of the year than what we expect when we do the budget. I'm willing to take some chances if I'm going to be held to the top line and not the 10 smaller lines. That's just my thought on allowing department heads to have more responsibility for how they manage their budgets.
Yeah. Okay, Susie and then Bob.
So I guess I want to check in with Becky. Becky, if we had a macrocosm presentation of the budget at town meeting, and we also had the FinCom work with departments on detailed line budgets, is that a conflict at all? Or do you think that having those two notions of what the budget entails is okay?
I think it's okay. I think that's part of what Joe Markarian had reviewed as one option. I think we declined to go that the committee was concerned about, multiplying, having more work to do, because if there's any discrepancy between that detailed budget and what you take to town meeting, you're dead in the water. So that's going to have to be, we're going to really have to triple check that. But I think it is possible. I just need to verify with the accountant, because she has to use numbers voted at town meeting. So if the larger number is voted and we continue with our expense report the way it is and hold on to those accounts, I think it's allowable, as long as the summary, matches by each division, like the total for the breakdown. And I don't think you're going to gain much, is my other thinking. Not all departments have much more than salary and expenses in them, and you can't mix salary and expenses, I believe. So the level of detail is not going to dramatically change because of, I think, I could be wrong. I'm going to preface that I haven't thought this through. But if you look at our budget, if you're talking about keeping things by department, most departments aren't more than 2 lines in the first place. And from what I have to check with Gail, but I know you can't, if there's a salary line in the budget, you can't use it for anything but salary. So I just have to find out what will happen there. But for the most part, there's probably only like 6 departments that you'll condense.
Right. But
Unless,
those are probably sorry to interrupt, Becky. I was just going to say, I think those are the 6 departments that, where we
but
would,
actually, it's probably only 3 departments. I mean,
It's highway department,
Highway,
fire department,
fire.
police.
yeah,
But you have a lot of the general government departments, the treasurer, the accountant, the collector, the assessors, they all have 4 or 5 lines each.
Right.
Maintenance, yeah.
It's good to use examples, maybe like So the building maintenance has
Yeah.
10 lines here, I think, maybe more. What if it was
That's
just
a good
one
one.
line?
Yeah, I think there's more than just 4 or 5.
You're right, you're right. I was just thinking in terms of departments.
Yeah.
Right.
But
All right.
like like the treasurer, he has a bunch of other lines. But you're not gonna, his are all specific. It's health insurance, tax title, those have to remain independent. You can't, I would imagine.
But maybe like Bob said, it would, we could look through the expense ledger, pick out ones that could be collapsed into one line. And do this like part by part. And like with the police, it could be all the police salaries in one and all the police
All of the
operating in
expenses.
another, rather than seeing holiday and blah, blah, blah. So
Right.
that's what we're
Yeah,
thinking
that
about.
part could be an advantage for sure.
Mhm.
That's what we're thinking about. That's, that's a possibility.
Yeah, but I think it is, I think it is definitely allowed. And you can structure it however you want. I think Leverett does that. I think they have one they present to town meeting. And I always thought it was really weird why they weren't showing the details to the people. I think it's kind of creepy, but that's just my personal take because I really appreciate having detail, but like Paul said, many people are overwhelmed by it, and that can be a benefit that you're not overwhelming people.
All right, let's go to Bob.
Yeah.
George, yeah.
I want to just echo what Jim Walton said, and that is, we're talking about two things here. One of them is that we want to see, we might want to condense the lines in the budget when we present it at town meeting. The other one is that the chair of whatever department we're talking about has a flexibility to take money from his general budget and use it the way he sees fit. Those are two separate issues that I don't think we should conflate. I do think that, unlike Jim Walton, I think that if someone has the complete flexibility to spend the money in his budget any way he chooses, the whole lump of money, that he's less likely to be detail oriented when he's spending the money. Now, just using highway departments, because something I'm familiar with in his lines, he has certain expenses every year that we fund, and then on a year-to-year basis they vary. And
Mhm.
so, we might like just pause funding a line, or I don't know if some of these lines carry over. Like, for example, the line I'm thinking about is the sewer clean out that he does every year, and he spends a certain amount of money every year. And some years I think historically he said, I don't have to fund it at the same level we did last year because we're in pretty good shape for this year. And then the next year he might raise it again. So I think it's useful for him and for us to know, to keep track of that expense separate from the rest of his budget. On the other hand, of course, with highway, he's got other kinds of costs which fluctuate a great deal in terms of the weather that he has to deal with, the emergencies he has to deal with, the cost of fuel, the cost of salt, the cost of sand, et cetera. So those things need to be tracked so that he and we and the taxpayer can understand them better. But I also think that even small departments like treasurer or tax collector, or you name it, there are some expenses which have fluctuating costs for the department. And I think it would be kind of a shame to just fold it in to a general budget where we don't have the option to sometimes, like I brought up the issue with Ellen McKay, for example, that since a lot of people are now paying online for taxes like I have for years now, that maybe we could look forward to some savings in postage down the road. So that's not something that according to Ellen, we can contemplate now, but I think in the future it'd be useful for us to know that our postage costs have gone down because of online accessibility to tax paying, and to reflect the funding of that budget accordingly. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I wouldn't want to lose that contact with detail in funding, and the same with the taxpayers' knowledge of that, because in fact, sometimes there are efficiencies in town government, which we always hear about the increased cost and increased cost of running the show, but we never, I really think it's human nature, Jim, that people aren't going to tell us necessarily that we've saved money in one place and that we can cut the budget accordingly. So especially if it's all one lump sum.
We've had department heads cut their own budgets.
Yes, we have, and I think having the detailed accounting is contributes to that tendency, and that's, you know, I'm not accusing any town department head of doing anything sketchy, but I'm just saying that having the detail is useful for everybody to understand what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not hearing any disagreements with that idea. George?
Yeah, I'll just, you know, in my mind, if we were to pursue it, if we thought there was benefit to doing this, I would want to do everything the way we do it now. The only thing we'd be doing different is presenting a summary budget for the ballot vote, for the warrant article to approve the budget, so that the managers would have that flexibility. But I'd still want to see the expense report that we get now at the level of detail that we get now. The only negative there is, I don't think Gail's going to be able to she's not going to be able to break down the budget at those lines. So we might from time to time have to go back when we see a department that's spending 100%, go back to the budget that they presented us, the details. So we lose a little
Oh,
something there.
we would need the expense report to stay the same.
Yeah, but you can't, but she wouldn't be able to budget it at the line by line basis because the approved budgets were at the summary basis. You mean to
that's
stay the
my-
same as the budget that's approved?
Yeah, well, that's what we would have, you know, that's, if we cannot have a summary budget to vote and still preserve the line items, I don't think that it's worth even considering. Like you said, we have to have the expense detail level to manage all
So
of the
just,
different departments and manage all the lines.
so what you're saying is, again, just so I understand, if we approve a summary budget, then the expense report that she can provide us is going to have to be at that same level of detail.
Well, I'm not certain. What I said was I wasn't certain. I'm hoping that's not the case because of the way Joe Markarian, I think he presented us two budgets, like a FinCom working budget and a town meeting presentation budget. But when it was reviewed by FinCom, the separate presentation budget was rejected. Well, the whole event, AJ, just so you know,
Yeah.
we reviewed all these formats. We spent 3 to 4 months testing out different formats, and little by incrementally, we ended up with the exact same format we started with a very, you know, so this is pretty interesting. We'll see if we can do something.
Yeah. So I think just so we're all on the same page, in terms of next steps, if you could have a conversation with Gail
Yep.
and just verify that this concept is even like theoretically viable, where we would have a summary budget that's presented at town and voted on at town meeting, and a detailed budget that we use for kind of our tracking purposes. So, because obviously, if that's not feasible, then there's no point in pursuing this. So I think that's kind of our sort of immediate next step. And so if you have a chance to do that,
Yes, I will.
we can revisit this at our next meeting. Susie, see your hand up?
Yeah, one thing I was thinking is that we could take that responsibility of talking to Gail.
Mhm.
This is a really busy time and lots of stuff.
Susie, I talk to Gail all the time, so that's one of, and I'm happy for you guys to talk to her too, but her hours are, when she's here, it's like I usually have a list of a few things and I can add it to the list. It's not a conversation that is extra. I'm already in conversation with her about different issues all the time,
Okay,
but I appreciate it. And if the FinCom wants to, you know, talk to Gail, that's great too. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to discourage it. I'm just saying this is something that I'm doing regularly.
All right. So yeah, I think the sequence would be, so we'll hear Gail's sort of general feedback about this. If her response is that it's possible, then I think we should have a follow-up discussion at our next meeting. And I think we would decide whether we want to move forward or not in planning this. And if the consensus is that, yeah, this is worth pursuing, I think we should probably have like maybe a little subgroup of us that work out some of the details, and maybe that subgroup can meet with Gail and kind of iron out some of the complicated questions that came up today. Does that sound like a good way to proceed? Okay. All right. Thanks guys for that. I think, yeah, I think let's see what's possible. All right. Next up, I think it was Susie had this suggestion that came up during our agenda planning conversation at the last meeting. And if I remember correctly, Susie, this was actually something you were describing, a practice that the FinCom used to implement, which was that each of our town departments, or at least the major ones, would have a liaison on the FinCom that would be a kind of a point person that is sort of having discussions about kind of as they're developing their budget, is reinforcing the kind of need for having information provided in the kind of way that we've asked for it. That sometimes is an issue where we have our budget form and then it comes back from a department in a different format, and then that creates it anyway. And then I think it's just yeah, I thought it was a good idea, and it seemed like there was some agreement about that. And so just wanted to ask the committee if you all felt like we could actually move forward with that, and maybe actually kind of have a conversation right now about who might be willing to volunteer to serve as that liaison to a specific department. All right, Susie.
And I want to clarify, my past experience was that the FinCom person created a personal contact that assisted the department in the ways that, like you said, this is the form we're using. Did you get your form? Blah, blah, blah. And then highlight due dates and listen to the things the department person might be wondering about or thinking about, and answer questions. But it was never that the liaison was the budget reviewer. They couldn't represent the FinCom in this process. It was meant to make it more personal, more connected. And when we got rolling on this and we got a budget in front of town meeting, there was a sense that everybody had made that happen. It wasn't an us and them. It came out of having a previous approach that was very us and them. And this was meant to make it connected. And so it would be important that as we look at this, we take that role of assisting in the process, helping them understand the due dates, listening, and helping them get their questions answered, so that when they come to the whole FinCom, they're really ready to present.
Yeah. No, that's a really useful description of the role. Okay, Bob.
Unmute, Bob.
I think it's maybe a good time for me to mention something that I thought was important that I talked about last year, which is the role of the finance committee in town government as part of checks and balances. And the thing that, if you read the handbook that's been provided by the Massachusetts, I think it's Society of Finance Committee members or something, they talk about how, yes, we need to have liaison persons going to various departments in order for us to facilitate the whole process of budgeting and providing funds to those departments. But one caution that handbook is explicit is not to become an advocate for that department. And that's something I just want to emphasize. We are not advocating for the department when we come back to the finance committee. We are there as a member of the finance committee trying to facilitate communication between that committee and the town department. I'm not saying there should be some hostility or anything like that. But it's a business arrangement. It's a business-like arrangement where we go and we can facilitate communication and also make sure that they understand our side, we understand their side, and maybe that part of that communication would be the liaison person reporting to our committee. But I just wanted to emphasize that we do have a responsibility to be the watchdog, to be the guys with the pencil, the sharp pencil. And in that respect, we should maintain a certain amount of independence, and because we have a different role to play than people in that department. So I think that handbook is a fantastic document, and I do encourage members to read it in its entirety, or at least the prologue.
No, that's helpful, Bob. And I think Susie's caution, which is worth reiterating again, which is that this liaison should not be providing any feedback or making any suggestions about sort of budget decisions. It's really just about facilitating the process and helping the department head understand the FinCom's expectations and around how information is going to be presented, or even just like if, as we have this comes up all the time, right? That we have a question, a follow-up question that we want to, as a group, ask of a department head. I think if we have a liaison, somebody who's, kind of established a rapport and has kind of been a resource for just getting basic information out to department heads, that becomes the kind of logical person to, get those answers to those questions. So yeah. Okay. Any other comments or concerns about just this idea? And I guess I would just ask, I think in addition, like other than the sort of, I don't know, the four main departments, not main, but just I'm thinking fire, police, highway, school. Are there, do we feel like we need this kind of liaison role for any other departments or entities in the town? Or are we really just talking about those four people or those four departments?
I wonder if we're talking about town hall in general, quite diffuse. I think Becky is on top of most of those, and she knows where we're coming from. I don't know if there's just so many. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I do know the treasurer didn't find the form, and I know he'll find it next year. That's the kind of spread outness that I wonder.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, there was no official, I know everything is being done by email, and I think you lose a lot. There's less, we used to get, all departments would get a notice in the box about this or that. And if there's changes in procedure, they need to get, and we're going to be doing that. We have a new legal policy, and that's going to go in all the boxes. We got to get it out to all the employees and all the volunteers. But I think that old-fashioned memo communication would be helpful, because people weren't anticipating you to be sending out the budgets with all the information filled in. I mean, there wasn't an expectation from everybody, because that communication hadn't gone to everybody, that this year finance committee is the budget request will include this separate sheet. So it's also how you communicate as a group to all the departments. And there isn't as, maybe we can work on that too. So departments have a chance to, if they're expecting to get something or receive something, they're much more likely to be successful. I mean, he got the email, but he didn't. I don't know if he got your email the first time, Susie.
It wasn't an email, it was, we printed them and put them on in the boxes.
Yeah, but that was totally useless to him. He needed a digital version, just like everybody else did, which I ended up trying to send to them after I got them from you. So, you know, they put their budgets together. Some of the departments use paper and pen to write up their budgets, and others do it all digitally. So we have to consider how the differences in how they're submitting their budgets
Hmm.
and make sure we match that.
So I guess one idea is we could do kind of we could have kind of 5 of these liaison roles, one each for the 4 departments we mentioned, and then a 5th for like treasurer, assessor, accountant, maybe like kind of those 3
Mhm.
roles.
Collector
What's that?
Collector.
would include
So-
collector, financial. planner.
Collector, yeah,
Financial officers. I mean, you could roll it into one liaison, the financial officers.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay. All right, so Bob, go
I
ahead.
just want to, I want to say, like, I think the important thing from my angle is I was a little frustrated that we did have some confusion about getting back the budget request last year. And I think it would be really important if we come up with a policy, we make sure that everybody understands what it is. And that we communicate, hey, we can communicate more than one way. We can have digital communication, we can have paper communication, we can have telephone calls, we can have whatever makes it work out and is useful to be sure that people respond and they're aware of what we expect from them, so that we have more of a clean process, an orderly process, and we have good communication from them about what they see as their needs. And there might be some changes. It's very typical that there are changes as the year progresses, and we address those things as things go forward. But we want to have much of a complete request as we can at an early date, so that we can work with that. And I think we got to make sure that we get the word out about what we want, what our program is this year, so that we will have an improved chance to just have a better, cleaner process.
Yeah, I mean, I think my thought, Bob, is that we would, when in October or whenever it is that we kind of outline we update our request letter and form, and we do all of that sort of planning work. I think we should, as a group, just like develop a set of kind of talking points of bullets, and that each of us has, and each of us that's serving as a liaison to a department can sort of bring those and kind of talk through those.
Mhm.
And again, whatever format makes the most sense, whether it's email or phone or whatever it is. So yeah, I think that's great. All right, so I think now is the time where we actually see if there are volunteers for these. So Susie, it seems logical, since you kind of do this role for the school, that if you would be willing to serve as a liaison to the school, that seems
Yep.
to make sense. Yeah, okay. All right, Bob? Is your hand up there? Oh, is that from before? Okay, so does anybody want to kind of volunteer to fulfill or serve this role for any particular department? Bob?
I'd volunteer for highway.
Okay, good. I was gonna suggest that for you.
I'll do the
All
finance
right.
departments.
Okay, so George, that would be financial officers, departments,
I'll do
treasurer,
assessor,
accountants.
treasurer, collector, and accountant.
Mhm.
Great, thank you, George. April?
I'll do police.
Okay. All right, and Jim Walton?
Fire, I think fire, is fire still out there?
Yep,
Yep.
Great.
Okay. Well, so that's all of them, and Jim Hemingway, your hand is up. Was there
Yeah.
one that you?
Well, I'll continue with the MLP, I think would be best for me.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, that makes
Excellent.
sense. MLP is gonna be Jim Hemingway.
And
Okay.
liaison to yourself?
So, yeah, somehow I managed to come out with no
Find other
assignment.
things to do.
Yeah, you get to be the chair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
You'll be
can be
plenty
my
busy.
liaison since you already are. Good.
okay. The only other thought I have is, George, you can let me know if you feel like, since it's one sort of group, but it's obviously, there are several
4 different
people that you volunteered. So if you feel like it might actually be useful to have 2 people kind of assigned that role, just let me know and I'll be
okay, thank you.
happy.
I will let you know. I don't think
Okay.
it'll be bad.
Okay, great. All right. So I think next up, Susie, I see your hand up.
I wondered if we were going to talk about what our own committee's doing. Minutes chair, is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, you're right. We should be doing that.
That's this
Okay.
one.
All right. Yeah, how did I forget? Of course, this is like our first. Because we didn't do this we didn't do this at our last meeting, right? We
No, because that was the prior year.
okay, yeah, of course, yeah. All right,
No.
so question,
Okay,
so
all
we should vote on and decide whether on who's gonna be our chair and I hate the secretary term. Can we just make it a minute taker or for the upcoming year? So any volunteers for either of those roles?
Well, I would nominate AJ Kasha as our finance committee chairperson.
And I'll second
That's a
that.
motion. Yes.
All right. Is anybody else dying to take on this role?
Jumping out of our computer
All right.
screens.
Are you willing?
So,
Is it working for you?
yeah, I'm willing to do it for another year. I think it's good for us to kind of rotate this every couple of years. So maybe maybe I can do one more year, and then when we have this discussion next year, we'll
You'll
think
remember.
about rotating it to somebody else. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with rotating it, but you also, you did it for a year, you got a lot of experience, so it'd be a shame to not use that experience.
And you might want to go 3 years instead of 2.
2, I'm thinking the same thing.
Because the first year is under the bridge.
First year is training, it's learning who the people are and how it works and getting a feel for us, and then
All right.
it'll go
Well,
slow.
It's up to you guys though. I was
Yeah.
just-
How about, I'm not going to commit to anything right now, but
Yeah,
we'll
good move.
this discussion-
We'll push him over the edge here. Come on.
we'll have that
And you
discussion
can't.
a year from now.
Okay.
Right.
All right. What about our minute taker? Is anybody, how Susie, I'm just, are you, how are you doing in this role? I mean, you do a lot for the committee beyond
Yeah.
maintaining minutes.
I guess I feel like taking the minutes should be passed around. People have stylistic differences and therefore some conflicts. I have worked through the year till I think I am aware of what I'm putting in the minutes and how it's going to sail. But there might be people that want to do it in a different style and, maybe less information. I feel like sometimes I'm reporting on more than needs to, but, and it's work. I mean, it got pretty hairy at the end, like a turnaround time of, not too many days, less than a week. So if somebody hasn't done it, maybe they want to take a try.
So,
I'm
go ahead,
Can I
Becky.
just ask Jim Hemingway, are you still taking minutes for the MLP?
Yes, I am, and I understand exactly where Susie's coming from. It's very demanding and takes a great deal of time. And I think Susie's minute taking, I know who preceded her, and those minutes, well, there's the comparison speaks greatly for how well you've done with the minutes. We all disagree, of course, from time to time, but it's been a big improvement over past minute takers.
Anybody want to volunteer?
I think Susie's been taking great minutes, and I think it's the same situation as you. And that is, I mean, we'll always agree about a style here and there, but that's why we have a conversation before we approve them. But also, I think it's the same situation. I agree with that it's a lot of work, and it distracts sometimes from being involved in the meetings. But Susie, you certainly seem to manage that pretty well. And the other thing I would say about that, it's the same situation we talked about with the chair. 1 year and out, seems like you've learned and you've improved, and now you've really got it down, and then you're going to stop doing it. It seems like another year or two might make sense, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, and I'll do it for another year, but I really do think it carries a kind of responsibility that everybody on this committee should experience at some time. It just is a role, and to work your process into meeting that role. I think it should be shared. So I don't have a problem with doing it this year, but I'm going to be like AJ, 2 and out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
AJ, I just want to share that George for many years has been taking minutes for the personnel board. And that's why I wondered about, Jim Hemingway is taking minutes for his board. And I just wanted to point that out. It's not that, and what has historically happened in a number of committees, the minute taker has always ended up the woman. And sometimes she's been the only woman on a board, and that is totally sexist. And I appreciate that Jim and George have, been consistently stepping forward in other venues. And I think, George, you might have done it for FinCom too over the years. I'm not
I
sure.
don't know that I ever have done it for FinCom. I've chaired, but I don't think I've ever done the minutes.
So we can look forward to next year. We'll have somebody to.
But I'll consider it. I mean, but I won't get to talk as much. You won't hear me talking as much because I'm going to be writing. That I just sucked myself, didn't I?
I appreciate you doing it, Susie, because I did, when I was the building committee chair, I was also a minute taker, and that gets really tiresome. I mean, it's very hard to keep everything organized in your mind and in your piece of paper. So I appreciate it, and hope you can do it. I think it'd be good if we vote you in again, if you're willing to do it.
All right, I am.
Okay, we'll double your pay.
I make the motion that Susie Mosier be our minute taker for fiscal year FY24.
Second,
Second,
Okay, let's vote on that.
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves,
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Welcome.
Stein.
Stein, aye.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's gonna
Sorry,
confuse me.
April.
The alphabetical order, the alphabet.
W is always last, Jim, sorry.
Yeah.
We haven't
Okay,
voted
thank
on the
you.
chair.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. So yeah, we should probably do the same for chair. Somebody want to make a motion?
I thought we did.
We did.
There's a motion
Did
on
we
the
vote?
floor for you.
I don't
Second.
think,
I thought we voted it.
We
No,
didn't
we
vote it.
didn't vote it. We made motions.
Oh, geez.
Susie,
Okay.
did it get voted?
No,
I didn't have that.
I didn't
Well,
think
actually, I have a check mark next to nominated. I don't have voted.
that's what it was.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think there's a motion. We never voted.
we never
All right.
followed through.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor. Let's vote.
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves,
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye. Oh, no. Well, yeah. I guess
Yeah,
not.
Mosier, aye.
Sure you can.
Stein, aye.
It's very appropriate.
Yeah, there it goes.
I got
All right.
it.
All right. So Susie, thanks for volunteering to do another year, and thanks for reminding us that we had to do this. Okay, next on the agenda that I have is reviewing the expense report that Becky shared. I think it was early this week or last week. I can't remember now.
I think it's Monday or something.
Yeah.
Okay, and I do have the transfers ready when you want to get to that, AJ.
Should we do that first or?
I think they kind of go hand in hand. You'll want
Yeah, they go
to,
hand in hand, right?
yeah, the one you're looking at. And we just want to make sure if everybody's looking. I'm afraid that I just got a brand new one though. No, what I send out on Monday, I think is, yeah, what I sent you is from 7-Eleven. So that was Tuesday.
You sent that an hour ago, right? Not,
Yes.
yeah,
So you sent something, yeah, just
Okay,
during
an
our
hour
meeting.
ago.
Yeah. So
I'm not
let's
sure I've got it.
see.
It's
I'm
been
gonna send
quite a
it.
One on Monday.
I'm gonna send it to April.
Yeah, I'm not sure I got it.
I didn't get it.
Oh, I don't have you on my, I don't have April on the new list. Bob, did
Okay.
you not get it?
you're on the email, Bob, rlgroves1@gmail.
5:37.
Yeah, it just came.
5:37. That's why it hasn't come in yet to me, so.
Yeah, well, that's the same one. It's got the same numbers as the one Becky sent us a couple of days ago.
Monday.
Yeah, the results are
Okay.
the same.
All right, so it's not. It's
Okay.
under-
There's no new additional expenses?
No.
Okay, I
it's
got it.
the
There
same.
are, but there has not been a warrant. So the accountant, so, and I apologize for this, but you all know that we have had an extraordinary amount of overruns and then we didn't get to the finance committee to request all the legal fees
Mm.
that we hadn't yet paid and other bills. So what you have is the last expense report, but we're having to work off of that and I'm adding in other expenses that weren't showing up in there. A little
So
bit.
Becky, how would you like to proceed now in terms of?
Maybe if everyone has that expense report to use how about we go through the transfer, if everybody can look at the line items on their own expense report, so I can just share the
Okay.
transfer.
That's fine. Yeah.
So
if
whether
you're-
That's
we
fine.
Whether we
You've
use.
got
one
the transfers in a separate
expense or
document?
the one- or
Yeah,
one
the
from the
transfer
pen.
here, I'll show you the transfer, AJ, it's,
Do you want to share your screen? Would that be easier?
yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
what I'm
good
gonna
idea.
do, but before I do that, I wanna make sure, I don't think I made AJ the co-host.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna make AJ, in case I crash,
Okay,
be sure that you guys can keep going.
okay.
Um,
But just to be clear, you're gonna share your screen with the transfers and members should have the expense report open on and kind of follow along on their own.
Yeah.
How do you have two things on your screen?
I don't know.
I think he's thinking-
And I'm gonna email the transfer sheet to George, so he has it in case I do crash.
I don't have it.
I hadn't crashed once and then I crashed twice on,
Okay, then I'm gonna go to the screen. Yep.
So I'll take over the screen if you crash.
Oh, I can have it underneath. I can see it
Yeah.
underneath.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got it?
Yeah, I do think.
sorry, it's Gmailing has taken me a minute. I had to open other screens. Suppose. George. Do computers get hot? Is that why they're so fussy lately?
What's that?
The computers just are so fussy and slow.
You
Heat
need
makes a
air
huge difference,
Yeah.
like with all of us.
All right, so we have the emergency plan almost in place. And I'll finish sharing my screen. Can everyone see that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Should I make it a little bigger or are you okay?
That's good.
okay.
That's good.
All right, so I'm gonna start with the first 5 items. Were problems that the accountant and she went through. The first 2 are personnel issues. As you all know, our administrative assessor disappeared last summer. We now have a new administrative assessor who's we'll see how long, anyway, our new assessor, his salary is quite a bit less than the old. We kept it at this, we did not reduce the assessor's line item coming into this year. We had just heard, and we need to experience with, we don't know how long this relationship, we hope this will become permanent, and if it does, the cost of it will increase dramatically over the initial $6,000. So it seemed wiser not to reduce that line. But anyway, the assessor's clerk put in extra time holding the office together last year over her regular amount. And so the first transfer 1, is taking $6,200 from the administrator, the balance of the administrator assessor's line, and paying for the overage in the clerk. Any questions on that one?
I'm not clear why
That looks like,
column C is called overdrawn accounts, because in fact, the administrative assessor wasn't overdrawn, is that right?
the assessor was
Maybe-
overdrawn.
Maybe
I think you
those-
got,
They're reversed.
yes. That's what it
Yeah.
looks like.
No.
No?
The source of the funds are the administrator and the
Are
fund.
in that one
Yeah.
because
They're
yeah,
reversed.
they are, Gail gave me the list. I'm sorry, I didn't prove it well enough.
So that's just
They're gonna be
reversed.
switched.
So it's
Yeah.
just that line?
At the very top.
What are the
The
other
source of
ones?
funds and it looks like the source of funds and overdrawn
I think the
accounts.
titles are,
That's it.
Yes, that's what I think, right.
That's all.
I think the title is, because I think my process was,
Well,
No,
I think the title's right. I think the data is should be flip-flopped
no, but the
because
snow
usually,
removal expenses are overdrawn. The
Well-
sanitary landfill is overdrawn, the rubbish recycling is overdrawn, fuel is overdrawn, building and heating is overdrawn, legal is overdrawn.
okay,
IT
Just
is
the first one.
overdrawn.
it's just the
Okay.
first one.
Just the
Just the
title
first
of the
one.
first one. So it should be administrator clerk is overdrawn.
I think the first 5 that Gail did, and that's why they're backwards, is Gail did the first 5. And she was not doing it the same way I do it. So I'm just gonna reverse the first 5.
Okay.
I see. Okay.
Ready? Don't look.
What did you say, Susie?
No,
Don't
she's
look.
got it. She's got it under control.
I
She
could not-
knows, there you go.
I was telling Susie, I didn't think there was a way I would be able to. Oh, all the numbers disappeared.
Just cut, no, they're in column E. You just got to copy them over.
Just just make column E bigger.
Or no, just copy it over. Copy those
Yeah, yeah,
numbers
yeah.
into D.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll
We'll have to do the same thing on the other side.
Open your eyes.
Not yet. She's not done yet.
There's still potential.
Well,
This is an Excel class, by the way. You're all learning how to move
Oh,
data around.
It's all magic.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
why.
it's M because it's, yeah, right.
Copy, now you gotta do copy. Oh,
I don't know how, it's these two were different then.
Yeah, they're because that column H is in there and it's not on the other side.
Okay,
Okay, all right.
One
Now-
other thing,
Yeah.
it looks like snow removal expenses are in there twice.
what's in there?
Line 2,
Snow
line
removal.
3 and line 12B.
19 and 20, 20 and 19.
Well, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm looking at column A, the references.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or,
okay, let me check her sheet on that one.
Okay.
I think you're right. I think,
one could,
there's different count, there's different. Well,
Yeah,
I
Well,
think.
it looks like it's duplicates all the way across.
Okay, so at the time Gail originally started, that's all, we were only overdrawn by that amount and then it grew.
so
so,
Delete that.
line 10, 19 and 20.
I see. Okay.
Sorry.
That's-
um,
That's a slightly
I-
lower number. That
I
looks
kept
better.
trying to work with Gail today and it never happened.
There was a difference in those lines.
But no, it was the exact same as the
Yeah.
78.35.
Now there's an issue. Both of those lines have the same code. On the snow removal expense and the snow removal wages has the same code.
But they're called 12A and 12B for some reason.
Yeah,
No,
but I
this-
think that's supposed to be
This number
5100.
that, I gotta check the snow removal wages and get the
Yeah, that's
right.
why the other line was probably the right one, the one that got zapped. Because the code was right, maybe right on that one.
I just assumed that meant we were using two different sources to fund that.
That's correct.
That's supposed to be 5110, I think. Becky?
Oh, great. It's 5110
Yes.
instead of, but is it
snow
a
removal wages.
220? Is it a 220 account? No.
It is,
Yep, 5110.
100, 423, 5700.
Okay, so
5110, 000. Yeah. No.
No.
The one that was, need to be changed is just that one, yes. Yes, there
well,
you go.
these wages is correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that line that you got zapped, I think that was the difference between the two
I
lines.
had the right one.
It must have been added a second time with the correct code. But now everything's good. Maybe.
You all.
Is that column K, are those values?
Well, all
in the
I was doing
breakdown?
was subtotaling
Okay,
the first five.
okay.
They're not relevant, right? They don't mean anything for what we're doing.
Okay, so we don't need to pay attention to that, yeah.
No, I just,
Hmm.
see on the health insurance, the 22 was the total of the health insurance and we
Yeah.
had 25,000 available. I was just making sure I didn't overspend.
Okay,
So those, that's not gonna be a part of it. I just was.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh, so I,
on to number 2.
Yep.
Okay, fire department training salaries went over by 3,900. And so that was paid for out of the fire chief's salary line. We were over $82.47 on office expenses. We covered it with office equipment. When you look at the spread, at the detail expenses, you will see a balance still remaining of about 1,500 in police cruiser maintenance. But once she pays the bills that are just about to come in, that she had come to FinCom with, there's gonna be an overage of $1,492.78. So we're paying for that out of police wages. IT support is over $900.2375. Including these 4, we're paying for out of health insurance where we had a remainder of $25,000. Building and heating was over by 8,825. We're paying for that out of health insurance. Fuel and gasoline, we were short 1,306.23. Question?
Yeah, did we take $30,000 out of health insurance and put it in the FinCom reserve?
Yes,
And so when you say that there's 25,000 left in health insurance, that's after the 30 was taken out.
correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Checking.
So, and that's the thing, you could, because the total is 55,000, you can't do it all from finance reserve anyway.
Yeah.
So you have to work with the select board to make the necessary transfers. So just, this is my recommendation, having gone through it, and you guys, if you want 30,000, well, you spent 5,000 out of FinCom so far.
Yeah, it's
for the health.
27,000 now. It's 26,863 now.
Yeah, I'm not advocating to take it out of there. I was just making sure we weren't taking from health insurance twice in two different places.
Okay. Well, we did, but we still have money there. Okay, and
Becky, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Just the $8,825 for heat and buildings, what does that represent in terms of proportion of our budget that we had provided? You know, offhand?
let me just,
Seems like a big number, but you know, I know things were high this winter, but
and there was also, we had to add an item. It turned out, so when we had the power outages and the generator went down at the school, we ended up having to, it turned out that the generator was almost completely out of fuel at that point. And so included in that 8,800 is $3,000 worth of propane for the generator. So that's an unusual thing that happens about once every 5 years or 8 years. It hasn't happened in, we haven't, this is the second time we filled it, I believe, in 10 years.
so let me ask, does the heating oil for the school, is that part of their budget or is that part of this
Yes.
line?
Yeah, the heating for the school is part of their budget.
Their budget.
Okay.
It's
So
a line
that-
item in theirs.
But when we
Walter-
fill the gas tank for the backup generator, it's not, is that what you're saying?
Right, because that goes under emergencies, emergency emergency management.
Okay,
So Becky, just remind me, please, when I'm looking at the budget, building heating is overdrawn by 1,900 and you're showing 8,825. So this is, so Gail hasn't finished the
Yeah,
expense
but
report.
we had to hold invoices. The accountant wouldn't release payments, and
Oh, I see.
we were not getting the. It
It's a
wasn't,
catch-22 situation.
yeah, we weren't able, you didn't have the money for us to transfer, and then when you got the money, we didn't get to the meeting to ask for the transfers before like the middle of the month, and closing was coming up, and so she just wanted to do it all under closing.
Jim Walton has his hand up there. Jim?
Yeah, Becky, also a question on the building's heat. Is there, that can't be, the reserve fund can't be another account within building maintenance or in the building area as opposed to health insurance?
I did not follow the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if, it seems like where possible, you usually, the reserve fund comes from the same department as the account that's overdrawn. But in the case of buildings and heat, that's part of building maintenance. And my question is, why not do the reserve fund, use one of the other accounts within building maintenance?
Number one, it'll take a few transfers to do it. Nobody has a balance of it. There's no single account that has a balance of 8,800. It would take 2 or 3 different line items and it just seemed easier to
Yeah,
transfer.
yeah.
They might not all be. in
Yeah, I guess I
there.
was looking at this when it was originally $1,900, but it's still, yeah.
Right,
It's
it's
still
$8,000.
there's still $8,000 within building maintenance, isn't there?
Over quite a few lines.
It to be redone to come out of 3 or 4 accounts, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, I mean, from a clean perspective or whatever, keeping wherever possible, keep the reserve fund within the same department where the issue is.
But do we know if all the invoices are
awesome.
in for building and maintenance?
I'm sorry, Susie?
So we're looking at the last report. Do we know if all the invoices that would fall under building maintenance are in? At this point, it looks like there might be like $14,000 not spent in building maintenance, but do we know all the invoices are in?
There could be further use of those line items. And that's why you try to keep away from individual line items because the departments might have other bills coming in like you suggested, Susie. And
Yeah,
that's
I guess the
why,
only point I'm trying to make is, it seems like wherever possible, if we're picking reserve funds, they should come from the same department. That just seems to me logical, maybe.
I understand that. It's just when you want to make sure. So if a department head goes to that line and discovers, he has a new bill that came in that he was holding, that he forgot about, so he hadn't told the accountant to hold it open for him, then he can't pay the bill. So that's not going to happen in the health insurance line.
Right.
So there's different logic for doing it this way. The other thing, you could do 30,000 out, you could do whatever you could out of FinCom, and then you're not keeping anything grouped within any line. So while that's the logic, you use it when you can and it's simple. When it doesn't work, you're not restricted. And I think in this case, Jim, it wasn't simple. And the 8,800 for building and heat is, because if we have unexpected bills from any department, we have no ability to address them in the other line items where we still have balances.
All right, well, what about maybe using that same logic for the IT support line? Isn't IT support also in building maintenance? And that's only $900. Could that be a transfer that stays within the department?
Actually.
Yes, it could.
Well,
Why
I'm
does-
just thinking transparency wise, we're trying to keep costs where they're within the department.
I
where they were
understand that,
originally
Jim. I get
budgeted
your
and
logic
all that.
and I explain that that's the approach I use when it's simple.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that straightforward. If you use telephone, the building's telephone line to cover IT and another telephone bill comes in. And there's you guys can choose to do it any way you want. This is a suggestion, and if you want to have me change the things to other accounts, that's easy to do. Let me know.
Becky,
All right, Bob, and then George. No.
yeah. I just want to say, I think from my standpoint, that we had to pay for the gas. I'm not questioning that, but why is it buildings heat? It seems like the other departments like the fire station, the town hall, are they paying for their fuel for their generators out of their own budgets? And if that's the case, it seems more logical to me that the school should have some way to identify this $3,000 charge other than heat, which is not what it is. So is there another way for us to maybe add a line to this spreadsheet and say, we're funding this, but it'd be more logical in terms of understanding, what we're paying for. We're not paying for heat here. It's not part of the heating line, right?
3,300 of the 8,800.
Yeah, so where should that be? Actually, where should that charge be listed as?
Given legally, it's where it has to be per our accountant.
Really? Okay, fine.
George?
I think Jim makes a really good point, and especially if for all those lines that we're funding with health insurance, why not use the FinCom reserve? But when we get to the planning board, we don't have enough FinCom reserve to cover those. But another point that goes along with what Jim said is, at the end of the year, anybody looking at the expense report is going to look at our health insurance line and say, geez, they came really close on health insurance that year to their budget. You know, that's the other downside to doing it this way. So I don't, and at this point, it's the 11th hour. I don't think it's worth making changes, but I think in the future, I think Jim's point is valid, and we've got $27,000 in FinCom reserve, so we could do it for a lot of lines. But, you know, I'm neither here nor there on that at this moment in time. But I think those are important points.
If you want to switch it to FinCom reserve, that's fine. I can, whatever you want to switch.
It's going to be a problem when we get to the planning board expenses, because those numbers are going to push us over, and the FinCom won't have enough money to cover that $6,000 that we're using for rubbish and sanitary landfill. So maybe we should just let it go. But that, you know, that health insurance line is going to look a lot different than what it really was when somebody's looking at it at the end of the year.
Well, and the other thing is the lines that are, the other lines are gonna look under, the building maintenance is gonna look lower than it really is.
Right, but the only reason I point out the health insurance is because we've dug into it so deep.
And in fact, the FinCom reserve is coming out of there, so.
Right.
Yeah, so good point.
So I think if we want to wrestle with this, we probably need to do it at a different meeting. And then I'm not sure how easy it will be. It's almost like it needs a narrative end of year that goes with it to explain, you know, in fact, health insurance did have a lot of leftover money, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think we can wrestle it out tonight.
Is it urgent?
I think that's the
Do we
purpose
approve
of
this
this
tonight,
discussion,
Becky?
is really to,
Yes,
Yeah.
the purpose, the transfers have to be done by the 15th.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that George makes a good point that we really do have to fund. Maybe we're not really all in
Susie made a great
the right
point.
way to structure it, but we do have to pay for it.
Mm.
That's clear, right? And as Jim said, the money in the FinCom reserve is coming out of the surplus and the
Health
insurance line
insurance.
anyway.
So the
So-
FinCom was overspent too.
Yeah.
yeah, I just think we should be, as much as possible, allocated using the reserve fund that reflects as accurately as possible where the money's been spent.
I mean, the transfers, not reserve fund.
But it's still, no matter where it comes from, it may, you know what, the year end will look different than the actual ending. And that's what,
That's what narrative.
it doesn't matter where it comes from, whether it be FinCom reserve, health insurance, police wages. To balance the budget, you have to make changes you have to make the transfers.
Got it, understand.
And there's not enough income money.
And there's not enough
We-
income money this year to do them all. It's
Could
been
we
an
approve,
extraordinary year.
could we approve these transfers as outlined here, but request that Gail, when she has the time, just write a kind of brief sort of narrative summary of, just so we kind of have an official sort of record that memorializes you know, these transfers, and will be potentially be helpful down the road when we're kind of looking back on this year. And
Well, I
looking-
assumed all the finance committee members memorialized this document in reference.
Right.
Right.
And we could take on writing the narrative rather than making it part of the accountant, because here's the facts. The things that are missing is like what was originally allocated from town meeting. Somebody could write this as a report.
And we have our original budgets.
Right.
What this impacts is the closing out of the books and all of the, what is, when I start the budget and I include the actual numbers, I think when we do the budget and we put in the actual numbers, maybe that would be the place where you can see them as you're working through the year to remind you of the, health insurance was really, at 75,000 and we took 50,000 for transfers. But I think we can build that into the budget documents where you go for your information.
Yeah.
Yep.
to make those
Absolutely.
notations.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So I think kind of in the interest of time and just efficiency, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve these, whatever they are, 12 transfers as outlined in Becky's spreadsheet here.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion before we vote? All right, George,
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Jim, I think you're muted. I can hear you. You can give me a thumbs up.
Hemingway, aye.
Okay, Cashew, eye.
Mosher, aye.
Stein, aye.
Walton, aye.
Great. Okay,
And don't forget, this transfer needs all your signatures.
okay,
When will it be ready?
yeah,
It's gonna be ready now.
all right.
So I'll put it
And
in
do we have, you want to give us a deadline?
Let's make it a contest. Who's gonna get here first? I'm betting on Susie.
Susie and Jim are.
He always wins.
Push me downstairs.
Yeah, they're downstairs. Oh, my God.
Would Monday be okay? Or did
Actually,
you say, you said the 15th.
it'll be in the box. Just so you guys know, if you're looking for me, I think, I'm hoping to work remotely for 3.5 days next week. So I won't be until Thursday, Friday.
And what day will the select board go through this same process?
The select board will be taking your recommendations for the transfers at their Wednesday meeting.
Okay,
All right,
so this will be in the FinCom box.
Yes.
With 2 signatures already.
yeah, no excuses,
First.
Susie, Jim. All
I'm gonna take you up on that challenge.
right.
Oh,
Get on your
George is
bike.
gonna be tearing up the road.
If you guys don't mind, I would like to kind of wrap up as soon as we can, just because I have this other appointment I'm going to be running to. But are there any important announcements or issues that folks need to share? Susie?
I would like to put on next agenda a review of the expenses the FinCom Reserve Fund was used for, to see if it indicates anything that we would look at funding differently.
Okay,
Just a process of understanding, because I think there's a few things we can anticipate and try to work with, but we have to review them all.
okay. So if I understand what you're saying, like, are there implications for how we're kind of our operating budget, or lessons that we can apply to that? Okay, got it. George?
Yeah, so AJ, you could distribute the FinCom Reserve Fund spreadsheet that we maintain. I have 2 things, but they don't have 3 things. One of them's, I think, important right now. The ComCom email we got from Miriam Dufont a couple weeks ago. Did you follow up on that? Is that all squared away?
I have not followed up or heard any updates.
So
since that-
I don't know if we need to take action on it or not. It's been so long, I forgot about it, but seemed like she was asking us a question and we needed to answer it. But we
I
can talk
know there
about
was-
the next meeting,
Yeah. All right,
unless
let's,
she's knocking on our door.
yeah, let me touch base with Miriam before our next meeting and see if there's some action or vote or discussion she wants us to have.
And then two other things for future meetings. These are minor things. PFAS loan payments. The whole PFAS loan, I'd like us to talk about it just so we can understand it better. I think Becky's gone over with us before, but I just want to have a better understanding. Do we need to incorporate that in our capital planning analysis? And then finally, our interactions and communications with the select board. We talked about liaisons, but we didn't talk about the select board. But I recall last year, there was a time or two when there was, some information at the select board that we didn't really have. And, we might have dropped the ball ourselves, whatever. But I just want to talk about how we interact with the select board, because I think that's where we really need a liaison. I
All right,
mentioned it earlier
let's put that on our next.
on the agenda. That'd be fine.
And when is our
Yeah,
next meeting?
Yeah, we should come up with a date. Okay.
We're gonna do.
What about, let's see, today is
25th? Tuesday, the 25th? Does that work? with
yeah,
the
I
select board?
think we're looking at either the 25th or the 1st. Oh, actually, I have. Okay,
25th, the select board meets this week, so the 25th would be, you both met this week,
okay,
but the select board was out of sync. We're trying
Okay.
to get back into the regular meeting, which is this coming week. So
So
the
they're gonna meet on
25th
the
is the
18th?
finance committee.
okay.
What is it? Is
Uh,
5:30 our time for this, or is it? On the
No,
20th?
6:30.
So I think we're going back to 6:30, except I have a conflict on the 25th. If we could do 5:30 one more time before we
Okay.
go back to 6:30, would that be okay?
Yes,
That
yes.
works.
That
Yeah.
Okay with me.
Everybody good with that? All right, so let's do Tuesday, July 25th at 5:30.
Okay,
Great. And April, yeah, our usual meeting time is 6:30. It's just summer scheduling stuff.
that's fine.
Okay. Great. All right. So any final announcements, comments before we adjourn?
Nope.
Okay. Becky?
If you want to go from the center of town to the beach,
Mm.
you have to take Windle Road now or Montague Road.
Yeah.
The road is closed.
Becky,
Lost Pond Road is closed.
when is the estimate of when the road will reopen? Would you know?
Yes, the project's scheduled to be complete. I think the second week of October. So for full paving and everything, it's September 30th to the second week of October. We're hoping
Wow.
September 30th.
Holy smoke. So the roads, Lox Pond Road is going to be closed, so the culvert is going to.
Yeah.
That amount of time.
So what's Wendell Road like for bicycles?
You
It's
cannot
great.
terrible, not good at all.
Not good, not good.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we need
Geez, I'm not
adjourn
gonna get to
the
ride in
meeting
Wendell at all.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Terrible.
But Jim, haven't you always wanted to live in a cul-de-sac?
Can we adjourn?
Can we ask it? I want to ask a
Yeah,
question.
AJ, you can go.
Oh, if that's okay, everybody. All right. right. See you
Okay, I
soon.
want to ask
Thank
about
you.
the trash contract. What's going on with that? Any idea?
Yeah, it's a series of unfortunate that, so at the end of the year, they ended up with, cans. And the company started the first week with cans again. But they didn't tell the drivers about the schedule, and the drivers saw all the all the cans out, and it was a paper week, so they didn't pick up the cans. So on the
Feel bad
second,
for Gary.
so
Oh.
Gary's been pulling his hair out. And today they skipped Lox Pond Road yesterday at the end of the day. The driver told me they were coming back. the manager told Gary they weren't coming back, so he told everybody they weren't coming back. I talked to Merrill and we got the truck back and they picked up all the trash on Knox Pond Road. My only fear is I had one call from the other side of the dam who said he didn't get picked up, but I have a feeling he didn't have his trash out at the right time. But I think we got everybody picked up now.
As a-
But I can't
as a
tell
very
you
good
if it's
start.
paper or cans in next week. I really am confused too.
We put everything
think
out,
it's-
everything out every week.
Yeah,
It should be
People
containers,
are doing-
it should be containers.
yes.
Are we adjourned?
Yes.
Great.
Good night, all.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night,
See ya.
Have a good night.
you too.
Bye.
So Becky. Hi. So real quick